Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. This is Tanush, and today we'll be discussing about how the new year 2022 is going to be for all the ascendants. So before we start, I just wanted to inform you guys that I have provided the timestamps for all the ascendants in the description section. So my request would be to please listen to the first 6-7 minutes where I would be discussing about the transit of planets which are going to happen, because 2022 is going to be a really happening year. A lot of transits, almost all the major planets will transit in 2022, and we'll see what would be the impact of that. So please listen to the starting 6-7 minutes where I'll discuss what would be the impact of the transit of the planet, and then you can go to your ascendant directly to see how the transit and how the new year is going to be for all of you. The next thing I would like to mention is you can I prefer to see the transit via ascendant, but you can also see the results through your moon sign. So I have already made a video on whether we have to see a transit via ascendant or moon sign. So I'm going to put the link in the description section so that you can go and check. So when you see the transit via the ascendant, it will tell you how the physical manifestation of the transit of the planets would be for all of you. Whereas when you look from the moon sign, it will tell you how the transit is going to impact you on a mental level, right? So both are fine. I mean, you can look via ascendant or moon sign, but I prefer the ascendant because, like I said, it gives you the physical manifestation, which is more important for all of us, and that is what most of us are looking at, right? So 2021 was a better period, I would say, as compared to 2020, though the COVID had shown its impact. Jupiter was debilitated in the sign of Capricorn along with Saturn, and because Jupiter was deprecated, we can see the things, or the fronts which Jupiter basically handles, or Jupiter is responsible for getting impacted, right? So the first front, we can see that education was impacted. So kids were taking online classes which were not quite effective initially. Jupiter also represents teachers, so teachers had to go that extra mile, and they had to learn technology, getting into Zoom calls, Google Meet and all those things. So they had to learn, and they had to take a lot of effort to conduct this online sessions, and still people complained that they were not very effective, right? So we have also seen this rise in the share market, right? At least in India, share market was all-time high, and the main reason what I feel is because Jupiter kind of controls the other malefic planets, and especially Saturn being its own sign and element, and Rahu being exalted, they gave a kind of boost up for the things which they represent, right? So we see the oil and gas prices, we see the prices of metals and many other things reaching all-time high. Now that Jupiter has transited into the sign of Aquarius, and it will be in the sign of Aquarius for first 3 months of 2022, slowly we'll see all the prices coming down. So the process has already started, at least in India. The petrol prices have started coming down. So this phenomenon we can see. Now let us talk about the transit of Jupiter. So Jupiter is right now in the sign of Aquarius, and would be in the sign of Aquarius when on the 1st of January. And on 12th of April 2022, Jupiter would transit into the sign of Pisces, right? Now Pisces is the own sign of Jupiter. Jupiter is quite comfortable being in Pisces, and Jupiter is going to be very happy being in Pisces, I would say, and it would give excellent results. Now the sign of Pisces basically represents a sign which is calm, which loves peace, right? So when Jupiter comes into this sign, we see this phenomenon being exhibited through everyone. So we'll see how it's going to impact the individual ascendants in a while. So that is about Jupiter. Then next, if we talk about Saturn, Saturn is in the sign of Capricorn and would be in the sign of Capricorn in the beginning of the new year. And Saturn would transit to the sign of Aquarius on 29th April 2022. And on 12th July, again, Saturn would come back to the sign of Capricorn, right? So it would retrograde and come back into the sign of Capricorn, right? So Saturn in Capricorn, like I discussed in my previous video, is a hard taskmaster, right? So it has come there to teach to everyone that we cannot achieve things easily. So one has to work very hard, one has to put in a lot of effort, one has to be quite organized, put in a lot of dedication, focus, concentration, and then only we would get the things which we are trying to achieve. And because Saturn in Capricorn represents the natural 10th house, so obviously it signifies to achieve anything in our career also we need to put in a lot of effort, and this is what Saturn has done from the time it got into the sign of Capricorn, right? Now when Saturn moves into the sign of Aquarius on 29th April, this move would be an excellent one, because now Saturn is coming out of the mood of being a strict parent or hard taskmaster, and now Saturn becomes more generous and more kind. And now Saturn has taught us how we have to be in our life, to achieve goals, how hard we have to work, how organized and focused we have to be. And now that we have learned that, now Saturn is ready to give the results in the sign of Aquarius. Sign of Aquarius represents the general mass, society. So it also represents scientific things. So when Saturn gets into the sign of Aquarius, we see that there would be a lot of social activities being taking place. So the government would get active and do a lot of good for the society, carry out a lot of activities related to welfare of the society. And next we'll also see a lot of inventions happening, right? Good progress in scientific and technical field, and also the research field as well. And because Aquarius represents the 11th house in the Kalapurush chakra, which represents 11th houses gains from the profession. So now, as I said earlier, Saturn is ready to basically give us the results of all the hard work we have put in, right? So it's a welcome move, but again Saturn is going to come back to Capricorn on 12th of July and would be in the sign of Capricorn throughout the year. Now so that is about Saturn. Now let's talk about Rahu and Ketu, because Rahu and Ketu are also going to transit into the sign of Aries. So Rahu into the sign of Aries and Ketu in the sign of Libra, right? So Rahu in the sign of Mesha Rashi and Ketu in the sign of Tula Rashi. Now it's a good move, I would say, but it has its own effect, which we will be seeing in a moment. Rahu and Ketu, when they are generally exalted, they give a lot of bad results as well. So the general notion that when a planet gets exalted, it gives very good result doesn't hold good with Rahu and Ketu. And what I feel is Rahu and Ketu have added a lot to the pandemic situation. And so one way you can correlate that this all started when Rahu and Ketu were in the sign of Gemini and Sagittarius, that is Mithun Rashi and Dhanu Rashi, where they are kind of very comfortable, and many say that they are exalted in Mithun Rashi or Gemini, and Sagittarius or Dhanu Rashi, right? And then they moved on to the sign of Taurus and Scorpio, which is Vrishab Rashi and Vrishik Rashi. and Rahu is basically very comfortable being in the sign of Venus, right? So it likes to be, because Rahu is a materialistic planet, and the sign of Venus is Venus again represents material enjoyment. So Rahu is quite comfortable, does excellent in that, but it gives bad results as well. And what I feel is it has added to the pandemic. So I see another wave of probably not much intensity, I would say, coming in, which is already going on in different parts of the world. Like we are seeing Germany is under lockdown again, parts of Europe, US as well, and probably in India also we might get a kind of a mid-sized wave in the month of December and January, and then later on subside as we get close to February, right? So, but because the vaccination drive was quite successful in India, and most of the people are vaccinated, so the impact would be quite minimal. So I would request people who have not taken vaccine due to various reasons to get vaccinated, so that they can stay safe, right? And also the society can stay safe as well. Now, let us see what Rahu and Ketu represent in the sign of Aries and Libra, right? So, the sign of Aries is quite aggressive sign, right? So, Mars itself is an aggressive planet, but Aries especially is a very aggressive sign. It represents aggression, it represents, determination, it represents a lot of energy, it represents, high stamina. Soldiers, soldiers in the war zone who do anything, to basically win. So Aries also represents, being focused on achieving the goals. So this is all Aries represents. And Rahu is also a materialistic planet, which is never satisfied. And Rahu represents taking shortcuts to achieve goals by wise means, right? And Rahu is never satisfied. So whichever sign Rahu gets into, it amplifies the qualities of that sign. So when Rahu, being a natural, materialistic, malefic planet, gets into the sign of Aries, it basically amplifies the qualities of Aries. So we see, the Aries sign, wherever it is placed in your horoscope, whichever house it owns, that particular house, being quite unstable, quite unsatisfied, because Rahu, what Rahu gets there is, an intense desire and energy to achieve things, right? So whichever house it represents, that particular energy is basically extended to achieve that particular goal, right? So it acts in that way. But people will do anything, people will get aggressive, people will get into that angry mode, and because Rahu is present, people might take shortcuts to achieve that. So the cheating tendency might actually get into people if originally Mars is kind of placed in that way, right? So and if Mars is placed in Aries for any one of you, then this transit is going to be highly energetic, and you have to be extremely cautious. The way you are going to channelize that energy. So you have to use that energy in a positive way, so that you don't get into trouble. Channelize the energy properly, and then you can achieve a lot of things. That's all I would say. Now Ketu is getting into the sign of Libra or Tula Rashi. Now Libra basically is a sign which is owned by Venus, and it is the natural 7th house, which represents marriage, which represents partnership, which represents emotional bondage, emotional relationship. And when Ketu, being a planet of isolation, being a planet of Vairagya, right? So when that gets into the sign of Libra, we can see that the relationships being getting into isolated mode. So there will be a lot of dissatisfaction in whichever sign, again, wherever Libra is placed. So on that front, we'll see a lot of dissatisfaction happening. And because Venus is a natural Karaka for relationships and love, romance, marriage and everything, so we can see a lot of dissatisfaction on that front also, right? So again, we have to learn how to manage things, and then this transits would not impact us. So before I start to talk about all the ascendants, I would like to say that a lot depends upon which Mahadasha you are undergoing, which major planetary period, and which sub period or Antardasha, and then it drills down to a lower level. So that plays a major role. A lot depends upon how the planets are placed in your horoscope. So the transits and the year 2022, how it's going to be, which I'll be discussing. Probably, it might apply 50% or 60% or 80% depending on, which dasha you are running and how the planets are placed, right? So now that I've given the background, let us start with the results of ascendants, right? So before going ahead, looking at the results of the ascendant, I would like to mention that once Rahu moves into the sign of Aries, so from Aries, Rahu would be aspecting the 5th as well as the 9th house from itself, right? And the 5th and 9th signs are Leo and Sagittarius respectively. So these two are also fire signs. Rahu is in the fire sign, and it's surely going to impact the other fire signs with its vision. So that is going to happen, right? Now let's see what is in store for Aries ascendant. So these are the planetary placements as of 1st January 2022. So we can see that Jupiter is in the 11th house. So I'll go planet by planet, right? So Jupiter would be in the 11th house as we discussed, till April. And in 11th house, Jupiter does good. And any planet does well in 11th house, but Jupiter here especially does very good. So you can expect good gains from your profession. Sitting in the 11th house, it's going to aspect the 3rd house. So your communication would be very good. Your relation with the siblings are going to improve, and your journeys, short journeys would be very pleasurable. And you can undertake any new project or any new business if you have planned for, you can start that. And Jupiter is aspecting the 5th house, right? So with its 7th aspect, it is aspecting the 5th house. So what does this mean is the 7th house now is going to get activated, and the 5th house is going to get activated due to Jupiter's vision. And you will get a lot of interest in learning new things. If you are into speculative business, like into shares or any other speculation, then this time is going to be really very good for you if the sun is placed very well. So because Jupiter in the 11th house indicates gain, and then Jupiter is aspecting the 5th house, your 5th house, which is the sign of Leo, right? So this is going to be very good. So people who are planning for kids, this is an excellent time. So you should go ahead, provided again your dasha supports that. This is an excellent time, right? So you have to plan for kids during this period. And with its 9th aspect, Jupiter is aspecting your 7th house, right? So this indicates that this is the time for unmarried people to get married. So if your dasha supports, and if you're looking out for spouse to get into marriage, then this is going to be a very good time for you, right? So Jupiter is going to do extremely well for you guys. So utilize the opportunity, don't lose it. Now Saturn is in the 10th house. We can see Saturn is in the 10th house. So Saturn is already giving you very good results at your workplace. But like we discussed, the results may not be very evident as of now, because Saturn is making you work very hard, be organized, be disciplined, and it has given you many good lessons to learn. And once Saturn transits into the 11th house, right? So this is the time when you can actually get a lot of gains. So we'll see that chart as well. So now Saturn sitting here is aspecting your 12th house, which is the house of losses. So you might be experiencing some losses during this period, and Saturn is also aspecting your 4th house, which is the your home front, as well as with the 10th aspect it is aspecting the 8th house, right? So these are the aspects of Saturn. So Saturn is doing very good for you. It is giving you a lot of learning, and whatever Saturn has planned for you, being in the sign of Capricorn, would be quite evident once Saturn moves into the sign of Aquarius. So that is when the plan of Saturn would be revealed to you. So Saturn is planning something very good for you, so don't worry about that. Now Rahu sitting in the 2nd house is actually bringing in a lot of wealth for you, because 2nd house Rahu brings a lot of gains. But at the same time, it has created some issues in your family, in your extended family, and if there were any issues with the ancestral property, it might have created chaos in that, on that front. A lot of confusion, and if there are any court cases, then there would be a lot of confusion on that front as well, right? Now Ketu sitting in the 8th house is surely giving you some health issues, and it is also revealing many things which you have been hiding from long time. So now let us see how the chart would be just during the end of April, because Saturn is going to change sign, Jupiter is going to change sign, right? So this is how your chart is going to be in the on 1st of May. So we can see Saturn has changed the sign, Jupiter has changed the sign, and Rahu Ketu have also moved into your 1-7 axis, right? So now Saturn, as we discussed, is in the house of your fulfillment of your desire, right? So very good placement for Saturn. So we can see, during this period you can actually reap the results of whatever hard work you have put in. So things are going to be very good. You will have a very good network circle. You will build a circle where you will be interacting with very good people in authority, even government figures as well. Now Jupiter has moved to the 12th house. So 12th house, it's own house, right? And Jupiter does very well here, but Jupiter here is very peaceful. It tends to get into the mode of meditation, being very peaceful. Obviously it does very good because this is the natural Kal chakra, it is in the 12th house. So now being in the 12th house, it is aspecting your 4th house, right? So if you had any plans to purchase any property, if your dasha supports, and you are planning in that direction, then Jupiter is going to support you on that front. If you also have planned to purchase any new vehicle like cars, etc., this is the right time. And Jupiter again aspects the 6th house as well as the 8th house. So Jupiter is capable of solving any health issues because it is aspecting your 6th house. You will do very well in the competitions, and any legal issues you are struggling with, Jupiter is going to support you on that front as well. It's also going to help you to fix your health issues. Now Rahu and Ketu are getting into your 1-7 axis, right? So this is going to be little tricky, and you need to control your emotions and high energy levels during this period, during the entire tenure of Rahu, right? Otherwise things would go very bad. Now because it is sitting in your ascendant, and we already discussed what sort of results Rahu gives in the sign of Aries or Mesha Rashi. So it's going to be very aggressive, right? And the desire to dominate, the desire to achieve things are going to be very strong. And the problem would be your personality would be kind of very rigid during this time. You will be extremely aggressive to achieve things, but Rahu is going to focus this energy on the house which is opposite to that is the 7th house. So you have to be extremely careful in your marriage if you are married. So you have to take care that you don't dominate your spouse or you don't dominate your business partner as well. Otherwise, things would go very bad for you, right? Now, Ketu is sitting in your seventh house. So Ketu is already, it has started creating problems because Ketu, as we discussed in the initial, video, Ketu creates a sort of isolation, a sort of renunciation in the house which it sits, and Ketu is not very comfortable in the house of Venus because Venus represents all the worldly matters, whereas Ketu is a kind of spiritual being, so it likes to be quite detached. Now the planet of detachment and isolation in the house of worldly affairs, where we maintain the relationship with not only business partners but with everyone, right? So it's not so good. So your seventh house is very badly affected, I would say, during the entire tenure of Rahu and Ketu, because Rahu is putting in a lot of aggression, as well as Ketu is creating detachment and isolation. So you have to be extremely careful on that front. Now Rahu is aspecting your fifth house, so which indicates that you will have urge to learn new things, so you can actually channelize your energies in that direction, right? So learning new things, you are seeking to get into different domains or new space. So if you channelize your energy there, then it's going to be a very good time for you. As well as Rahu is aspecting your ninth house, so during this time you would desire to travel a lot. You will travel to different spiritual places as well. You can get into long distance travel, even travel to foreign land, because Saturn already is in the 11th house of hopes and wishes, and your Lord of ninth house is in the 12th house in Swarashi, its own sign, right? So this clearly indicates that foreign travel. Now let us go to the next ascendant, which is Taurus or the Vrishab Rashi or Lagna. So this is the planetary placement during the starting of year, that is on the 1st January 2022. So Rahu and Ketu are in your 1-7 axis, and Rahu is kind of has given you a very good personality, so you are more confident as of now. You have a lot of desires which probably you are fulfilling. It depends on the chart. So your personality has become magnetic, and people are kind of attracted to you. But Ketu sitting in the 8th house has created again the same sort of scenario which we discussed, for Aries. So Ketu has created a kind of detachment, a kind of isolation, a kind of renunciation in your married life, right? So that would continue till April, end of April, and once Rahu Ketu moves to 1-7 axis, which we'll be seeing in few minutes, then the scenario will completely change. Now Jupiter has come into 10th house, so Jupiter is kind of okay in the 10th house. It doesn't like being in the 10th house, but it's kind of okay. So one thing is, your Lord of 8th house is now in the 10th house. So this indicates that there would be a complete shift in your working area. So you might get into new project, or you might get into projects or work where you will have to do a lot of research. You will have to dig into a lot of details and do research, and then you'll get the result. So you will be working in those sort of things, and Jupiter is going to surely help you on different fronts, because Jupiter is Lord of your 11th house as well, right? And Jupiter now is actually moving towards your 11th house, and it is in that mood of moving to the 11th house. So we'll see what results it will give in some time. Now Saturn, which is a lot of your fortune, a lot of your future, is already in your 9th house in its own Rashi. So Jupiter from January 2020 has made some plan and has made you work in that direction, and now once Saturn moves to the next house, that is your 10th house, So this is when actually you'll see the results which Saturn has had planned for you, right? So that is when you'll actually see what Saturn had planned for you, and you will get into some new project which is extremely good, and you'll get a lot of name and fame in that in that project. So your professional life is going to be very good, during the entire tenure of Saturn. So the entire 2.5 years of Saturn, till Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius or Kumbha Rashi, your professional life is going to be very good. So utilize this time because it's an extraordinary time. Utilize it properly. So let us see how planets would change by end of April for Taurus Ascendant. So Rahu and Ketu have moved to your 12th and 6th house respectively. Jupiter has moved to your 11th house, right? So the Lord of 11th house in the 11th house, extremely good. So 11th house is house of hopes and wishes, house of fulfillment of desire, and that planet, the owner of that house, is in that house Svarashi. So there cannot be much better time than this. So if you are running Jupiter or Guru Mahadasha, then this period is going to be excellent. This transit of Jupiter is going to give you a lot of gains from your profession. You might probably change your job. You'll get a very good salary, a very good package, and if you are in the same job, you can expect a hike in your salary, hike in your position. You'll have a very good network circle during this period, and you will actually enjoy being with them. You'll have a very good time. Jupiter again, sitting here is aspecting the 3rd, 5th and the 7th house respectively. So people who are planning for kids, yes, you can plan for kids. This is the right time. And people who are due for the marriage can plan for your marriage, because Ketu sitting there till now was actually creating a lot of issues, right? So now Ketu has moved out and Jupiter is now aspecting that sign. So a lot of positivity in your 7th house. What does that mean is people who are due for marriage will get married. They'll get a very good partner. People who are married, who are facing issues like we discussed, renunciation, detachment, isolation in marriage, now things are going to change, right? So the scenario is going to change. So you'll see, relationship between husband and wife to be much better. They'll relish, each other's company. Things would be very good now, right? Now Rahu has moved to your 12th house. One thing is, in 12th house, Rahu gives a lot of losses to you. So you have to be extremely careful on that front, because Rahu is in a very aggressive sign sitting there, and you can expect losses. So losses in the sense, probably during this time, you will be kind of addicted to purchasing things which are not quite necessary for you. You might be addicted to purchasing things like new mobile, new laptop, new watch, or going to different places. So Rahu sitting here will actually make you do all these things. So you have to be very careful. Rahu will also make you travel to different places, also to foreign lands. If your dasha supports, obviously you would do that, because Rahu represents foreign land, and Rahu in 12th house surely would give you the opportunity to travel to foreign lands. Now Ketu is in the 6th house, right? So you will have a lenient attitude towards your enemies, and that might actually hit you very hard. So you have to be very careful on that front, and your daily routine might actually slip out of your hand. So you'll not be able to maintain your daily schedule, and your daily routine might be quite disturbed due to this. So you have to be careful on that front also. Now you can see, Saturn here has moved from your 9th house to the 10th house, right? So Saturn obviously is a Yoga Karka planet for you. It creates a Raj Yoga for you guys. So Saturn sitting here is going to give you excellent time in your professional life, as we already discussed, right? So for Taurus Ascendant, it's going to be a good year in terms of Saturn and Jupiter transit. but you have to be extremely careful with respect to Rahu and Ketu. Now moving to Gemini ascendant, right? So Gemini ascendant people had a very bad period during last year. That is 2021 was full of struggles, right? So why? Because Rahu and Ketu, as we see the planetary alignment here, Saturn was in the 10th house, Swarashi though, but in the 8th house. So Saturn might have revealed secrets to you or things which people were hiding, and that might have created a lot of disturbance to you, right? So Saturn really did that, and that is actually very good in one sense. Though temporarily you might be very depressed, or you might have a feeling that you are quite lonely, and people are not actually up to your expectation. But Saturn has shown you the ground reality, right? So it's a very good thing, because Jupiter was also in your 8th house, creating a lot of issues, right? So now Jupiter is in the 9th house. So Jupiter has excellent directional strength in the 9th house. So what we can expect is Jupiter is going to give you very good time in your profession, because it's creating a Rajo. The lord of your Kendra in the Trikon is is a Rajo Karka placement. So it surely gives you a very good time in your profession. Jupiter sitting here is aspecting your 3rd house, so your communication would be very good. Your relationship with your younger siblings are surely going to improve. Jupiter is again aspecting the 5th house. So what we can expect here is people who are planning for kids again can plan, because Jupiter is aspecting the 5th house, right? And Jupiter is a Karaka for kids as well, for marriage and kids, right? So Jupiter is a Karaka. So you can surely expect that. If you want to learn something new technologies, yes, this is the right time for you to learn things. Now let us see how things would change for you once you touch April, or once you reach the end of April. So this is the chart, right? Things are very good, because Saturn now has moved to your 9th house, right? So the lord of 9th house in 9th house, excellent placement. Saturn getting out of your 8th house is a very good transit, I would say. So Saturn now here is very relaxed, and now is free to give you very good results, right? So it's going to ensure that your future is going to be very good. So things would move in that direction. So Saturn would plan things in such a way that your future would be ensured. So you'll be very peaceful and confident of your future. Now Jupiter has moved to your 10th house. So the lord of 10th house in 10th house, right? Excellent placement. So this is a very good time for you. So starting from end of April 2022 to 2023, Jupiter is going to be in the sign of Pisces or Meena Rashi. Though it's going to retrograde and all that thing, so I'm not going to discuss about retrogression. But Jupiter would give you very good opportunity in your professional life. So utilize that opportunity, because this 1 year would be filled with opportunities, very good opportunities. So don't miss this 1 year. Utilize this 1 year. Jupiter is going to fix your professional life for sure. Now Rahu has moved to your 11th house, so that's very good, because Rahu does excellent in 11th house. So you can expect windfall of money. So financially you are going to be very strong, because last year was terrible for you, but 2022 is going to be excellent. So Rahu will give you windfall of money. Rahu in 11th house will make you very very confident, as well as you'll have a very good network circle. You'll be moving with people who are well placed in society, superiors, and one thing is that Jupiter would Rahu, because Rahu is a planet which is quite materialistic, and it doesn't get that fulfillment, how much ever it attains. So you have to be very careful, because it's sitting in the house of desires. Your desires should be all time high. So you have to filter out the desires which are not actually quite realistic. So you have to be very careful on that front and focus your attention only on desires which can be fulfilled, which are very necessary, because Rahu is going to ensure that those desires will get fulfilled, right? Now Ketu sitting in the fifth house, now again it creates a lot of issues with your children, right? Because children, your relationship with your children will be little strained. You will feel kind of isolated. Your children will behave in weird ways, so don't worry about that. It's a temporary thing. Anyways, things would change once the transit happens. So be a little careful not to push things to the end, because Rahu is sitting, in the 11th house, aspecting again the 5th house. So you have to be very careful on that front. Otherwise, next year is going to be one of the best years for Gemini Ascendant. Now for Cancer Ascendant or Karka Rashi or Karka Lagna, this is the planetary placement as of 1st January 2022. So Rahu is in your 11th house in exalted state, and it's excellent, right? So Rahu might have given you a lot of good opportunities. Rahu might have given you windfall of money. Financially, it might have made you very strong. Saturn in your 10th house might have balanced out things, and it will continue to do that till end of April. And Jupiter now has moved to your 8th house. So the Lord of 6th house is in the 8th house, right? So Jupiter, let us start with Jupiter. So Jupiter in the 8th house will give you some health issues. It's surely going to give you some health issues, because it is a lot of your 6th house as well. Though it creates a yoga known as Viparit Rajyog, but things would go bad, and then you would actually rise above that, and then you'll control the situation, and things would be back to normal, and you'll flourish, right? So that is the indication. But anyway, you can expect some health issues. So it's only for first 3 months or the first quarter. Anyway, Jupiter would be moving to your 9th house, so that is going to be an excellent transit for you, right? Now sitting in the 8th house, Jupiter is aspecting your 2nd house, so it might create some hurdles in your income, source of income, but again that's going to get resolved. Now Saturn is in your 7th house, so people who are not married and looking out for partners, this is the best period, because the Lord of 7th house is in the 7th house. So till now, the debilitated Jupiter was with Saturn, whole of last year, though it moved in the sign of Aquarius for 2-3 months and then came back. But it was kind of probably delaying your marriage, I would say. Now that Jupiter is out, of your 7th house and in a very good position as well, at least it's better than debilitation. Now this is the time for you to get married. So if you are planning to get married, make sure that you do it. You start working in a direction during this period, because it is very supportive for you. Now Ketu was in your 5th house. People who are inclined towards spiritual practices, this was one of the best placement for you. So you might have got into spiritual practices, learned a lot of philosophy, read different kind of books during this period. So now let us see how things are going to change for Cancer moon sign or ascendant during end of April. So this is how the planets are changing. So now Rahu has moved into your 10th house, right? So Rahu has moved into your 10th house, and like we discussed, Rahu here becomes extremely aggressive. Though Rahu does well in the 10th house because it is one of the Upachaya houses, but Rahu here is getting extremely aggressive. So the focus of aggression would be career. So sudden thoughts of getting to the top position, getting there, might arise. You might have, so in that aggression, you might have heated arguments with your colleagues, with your boss or with your superior. So you need to be very careful on that front, because Rahu is going to do that, right? So you might feel that you deserve much more, and you are deprived of that position, and then that will make you very angry, very aggressive, and Rahu might push you to take unfair means to reach there. So you need to protect yourself not to get into the trap of Rahu, otherwise things would go extremely bad. Now Ketu would be now in your 4th house, right? So Ketu in 4th house would create some sort of dissatisfaction at your home front, like the things which we discussed, like isolation, detachment. So all those things you can see manifesting at your home front. So you also need to be very careful, because Rahu's aggression would also be there, right? Now Rahu sitting in the 10th house will also affect your 2nd house, and that aggression of Rahu might also be upon your extended families. If you have any issues with your ancestral properties, you can see Rahu getting into unfair means or practices, or getting into fights, verbal fights, even physical fights sometimes with the family members. So again, you have to be very careful on that front as well, right? Now if we look at Jupiter, Jupiter has moved into the 9th house. So the Lord of 9th house in the 9th house, excellent position for spiritual seekers, excellent position for people who are planning to travel to long distance places, like to even to foreign lands. Excellent placement, right? So Jupiter sitting here is again aspecting your 3rd house, your 5th house, and your 7th house, right? Sorry, your ascendant, your 3rd house, and your 5th house, right? So Jupiter will actually resolve any health issues if you have, and then issues with your communication would be resolved. Your communication will be very mature during this time. So Rahu's aggression would be there, but again Jupiter would try to normalize the communication, right? And Jupiter is aspecting your 5th house, right? So Ketu was present till end of April in your 5th house, and if you had any plans for kids, it might have delayed that, right? So now that Ketu is moving out and Jupiter is aspecting your 5th house, Jupiter is aspecting your 5th house, this is an excellent time for you to plan for kids, to learn new technology, to get into new space. So utilize the opportunity is going to be one of the best transits with respect to Jupiter. Now Saturn, the Lord of 8th house, has transited into your 8th house, and because it is the Lord of your 8th house, Saturn would actually bring out the health issues which you have or which were hidden, and then it will make you work on those health issues. So you will have good relationship with your in-laws as well, and people who are involved in research, or people who are involved in occult, learning astrology. So this time would be very good. Students who are involved in research work, in PhDs, etc. Again, this is going to be excellent transit of Saturn, right? Now coming to Leo ascendant, this is the chart which you are seeing. So this chart is during this is a snapshot of the chart as of 1st January 2022. So we can see Rahu is in the 10th house, Ketu in the 4th house, Jupiter in the 7th house, and Saturn is in the 6th house, right? So Rahu in the 10th house might have created a lot of confusion on your work front, as well as your aspirations might be too high during this period. So if Rahu is actually badly placed in your horoscope, then this would have been a terrible time for you at the workplace. And if Rahu is actually well placed in your horoscope, then this time would have been very good for you in the career, right? Now Ketu in the 4th house has already created a kind of isolation at your home front. So you were kind of emotionally away from your family. So this is about Rahu and Ketu. And Jupiter has now come into 7th house, which is kind of okay, not a very bad transit. So if you are looking for marriage, then this is a very ideal placement. Also, Saturn would be moving to your 7th house, so that transit will be very good for you if you are planning to get married. So we'll see that in a while. Now Saturn is in your 6th house. Saturn does very good in the 6th house, and 6th house is also its own Rashi. But obviously, it has taught you a lot of lessons in a very hard way, I would say. And once Saturn moves to your 7th house, it gets very good directional strength. And again, like I said, you would be ready to reap the results of all the hard works you have put in, right? So now let us see your chart as of 1st May 2022. So we can see, almost many planets have moved out. Saturn has moved from the 6th house to the 7th house, and now because your 7th house lord is in your 7th house, this is the time where actually you can get married, right? So if you are looking for proposals, you will get very good proposals. And Jupiter now is in your 8th house, but it is in its own sign, right? So it does good because it's in its own sign. I would say it does good. It tries to fix, the health issues which you are facing, and if there are any hidden issues, it will actually bring them to the surface and try to fix it. Also, 5th house lord in the 8th house also indicates that this is a time where you would get a lot of interest in studying, occult, studying astrology, hidden subjects. Good time again for research. Now from 8th house, Jupiter is aspecting the 2nd house of family, also the 4th house. So Jupiter will also support you if you are planning to get married, right? So I would say it's a good transit of Saturn as well as Jupiter. Now coming to Rahu and Ketu, one good thing is Rahu has moved out of your 10th house. So your stability at the job place would be better now. But now like we discussed about Rahu in Aries or Mesha Rashi, Rahu now has a lot of aspirations of things related to 9th house. So what are the things related to 9th house? One is higher education. So people who are, students, basically this is a very good time because now they can focus all the high energy levels into studying things, going for higher studies like masters, PhDs, etc. Time to travel, I would say, because Rahu represents foreign lands. 9th house also represents foreign travels. So it's a good time for you to travel if you have any plans. Travel for studies, I would say. But you have to be a little careful because this will actually make you kind of atheist. This kind of placement of Rahu, it will make you more materialistic and atheist. So you have to be a little careful because aggression would be very high during this period. So it will also give you a tendency to go against your teachers, think oneself very superior to the teachers. So that kind of tendency has to be curbed, right? So now Ketu is in the 3rd house, and Ketu does okay in the 3rd house. It's not so bad, even though it doesn't like to be in the sign of Libra or Tula Rashi, which is the sign of Venus or Shukra. So Ketu is okay because it's balanced, I would say, because it's in the 3rd house. But still, you can see, things happening which would, create distance between relationship with your siblings. Your communication may not be very clear during this time. There might be little confusion in your communications, as well as, your emotional bonding with your partners. So otherwise, this transit would be very good for you, and especially for your marriage as well as stability at workplace. It's going to be excellent, right? Now let us come to the Virgo ascendant or Kanya Rashi or Kanya Lagna. So this is the snapshot of the planetary position as on 1st January 2022. So we can see Rahu is in the 9th house, Ketu is in the 3rd house, Saturn is in your 5th house, and Jupiter was in your 5th house till recently in a debilitated state, and now it has moved on to your 6th house, right? So Saturn is kind of okay in the 5th house, though it doesn't like being in the fifth house, but it's still, I would say, it's okay. It surely gives you a lot of hardship. It makes your relationship with your children little cold. Also, your emotional bonding with your partner also little cold. But once Saturn moves out of your sixth house, then things would change. Now, the most important thing is once Jupiter is in the sixth house and it is aspecting your 10th house. So this placement of Jupiter will help you to get into a new job. So you'll get a very good job. In fact, and the salary would be very good because sitting in the sixth house, it is also aspecting the second house, right? So you'll get a very good package and a good job. But only thing is you will have to initially struggle a little bit to get stability in the job till Jupiter moves into your seventh house. So once Jupiter moves into seventh house, then you'll have very good stability in your profession as well as married life as well. Because your married life, you have seen a lot of issues in your married life because Jupiter, which is lot of your marriage, was in debilitated state along with cold Saturn, right? So that might it might have created a lot of issues at your home front because it's a lot of your fourth house as well as in your marriage and business partnership. But now Jupiter has moved out of that position, and we'll see what would happen when Jupiter moves out to your seventh house. So this is still end of April, and once you touch the end of April 2022, the planetary alignment changes, right? So now Rahu is in the 8th house and Ketu is in the 2nd house. So now Jupiter is very well placed. Saturn is excellent because Saturn is in its Mool Trikon Rashi in the 6th house. So 6th house Saturn does excellent. That too, it is in the Mool Trikon Rashi. So no issues on the Saturn front. It's going to give you excellent results. Now Jupiter now has moved to your 7th house, which is its own Rashi, right? Now Jupiter is very peaceful. So would be your environment at your home as well as your married life. So your married life would be very good. So you'll basically enjoy the time with your spouse. The strained relationship would now be very very normal, and the bonding would be very good between husband and wife. So if your business partnership was also troubled, now things would be straightened, and things would get much better, I would say, during the transit of Jupiter in the sign of Pisces, right? Now the problem would arise with Rahu and Ketu, because Ketu sitting in the 2nd house would actually create issues with your extended families, which means your uncles and aunts and their kids, so your cousins and all that. There would be a sense of isolation, a sense of detachment. It will take you away from them. If you had any issues with your ancestral property, then this is the time where the confusion is going to increase a lot. So Ketu would be doing that. And one more thing is, Ketu would also kind of create issues with your saved money, right? So 2nd house also represents your ancestral properties as well as the money which you have saved. 11th house represents the gain of money, and 2nd house represents your savings. So you have to be very careful about your savings. So what I would suggest is, once you touch April, be very careful about your savings. Try to invest or secure your money in some very safe places, and keep one thing in mind, that the money would be blocked for some time. It's not going to come to you. So that money would be blocked for some time, at least for 1.5 years. So be very clear about that, right? Now Rahu sitting in the 8th house will surely create issues here. Now issues is, first is you'll have a lot of aggression towards your in-laws, right? So you have to be very careful on that front. You can expect some sudden ups and downs in your life, because Rahu is present there, and a lot of aggression is also there along with Rahu. So sudden ups and downs, sudden events would also be there. So be little careful while you are actually interacting with your siblings, because this aggression might impact the relationship with your siblings as well. And there might be chances of you driving very rash and ending up in accident, right? So be very careful on that front. Keep your mind cool and things would be much better, because Jupiter and Saturn are going to do tremendous good for you during this period. And especially if you're running, Saturn or Jupiter Mahadasha, then this transit is going to give you excellent results, right?